All right, get ready for a deep dive, folks. We're talking hormones, and specifically how your adrenal glands create those powerful chemical messengers, steroids.
Hmm.
It's a system that impacts a lot from how you handle stress to your blood pressure. And we've got some serious medical research to unpack, so uh, buckle up.
Yeah, it really is amazing how these tiny glands, sitting right there on top of your kidneys, can be such powerhouses,
Mm-hmm.
influencing everything from, well, your mood to your immune system.
Oh, absolutely. But hold on. When I think steroids, I think of, athletes and not really the healthy stuff.
Right.
So how do our own bodies use these hormones?
Well, it's all about balance, right? Steroid hormones, they're essential for a whole range of bodily functions. And what's so fascinating is that the adrenal glands, they're actually organized into zones,
Okay.
each specializing in producing a certain type of steroid.
Zones, like a hormone factory with different departments.
Exactly. And the raw material, that they use to make these steroids, it might surprise you.
What is it?
It's cholesterol.
Wait, cholesterol. Isn't that like the thing we're always told to avoid?
Yeah, it gets a bad rap, I know. But cholesterol is actually essential for life, believe it or not. It's like the building block for all steroid hormones.
Wow.
You can think of it like the raw material, that gets transformed into those powerful chemical messengers that we've been talking about.
So even if someone's watching their cholesterol, their adrenal glands can still, get what they need.
Absolutely. The adrenal glands are very efficient at grabbing that cholesterol from your bloodstream. Whether it's the LDL or the HDL, they even have this special receptor called SRBI. That's like a VIP lane for the HDL cholesterol to get into those cells.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've got our cholesterol delivered.
Yeah.
But how does it, magically transform into something like cortisol, the stress hormone?
Right, right. Well, it's actually, a multi-step process,
Yeah.
kind of like an assembly line, you could say.
I like that.
You have specialized enzymes. They're like skilled workers. And each of them has a very specific job to modify that cholesterol molecule step by step
Okay.
until it finally becomes cortisol.
And these are those cytochrome P450 enzymes I've seen in the research, right?
Yeah, you got it. Those are a family of enzymes that are absolutely essential for this whole transformation process.
So walk me through it. How does this cortisol assembly line work?
All right. Well, it all starts with cholesterol being converted to pregnenolone.
Okay.
And this happens inside the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell.
Right.
And then a special enzyme called CYP11A1 really kicks things off. But here's the really cool part. The CYP17 enzyme, that acts like a fork in the road, you see.
Okay.
It determines whether a precursor molecule will become cortisol or an androgen. And, this balance is crucial for maintaining hormonal harmony.
Whoa, hold on. Androgens. Aren't those like male hormones?
Well, we tend to think of them that way, but actually both men and women produce them.
Yeah.
And they play a role in a variety of functions. But for now, let's just stick with that cortisol pathway.
Okay.
So after pregnenolone, it gets converted to progesterone
Yeah.
and then to 17-alpha-hydroxyprogesterone,
Right.
all thanks to these different enzymes working away.
Uh-huh.
Then we move over to another part of the cell, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and another enzyme steps in.
Gotcha.
So, you see, it's a carefully orchestrated process, with each enzyme having its very own specific role.
It's mind-blowing to think about, all these tiny players working together with such precision,
Yeah.
but with so many steps involved. I mean, is there anything that can go wrong in this process?
Oh, that's a great question. And it leads us to a group of genetic disorders called congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH.
Okay.
When one of those enzymes on the assembly line is missing, or maybe it's malfunctioning,
Uh-huh.
it can really throw off that whole balance of hormone production.
CAH. That sounds serious.
It can be, yeah. It depends on which enzyme is affected and how severe the deficiency is. But we'll dive deeper into all the specifics of CAH in the next part.
Okay.
For now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about another key player in this adrenal steroid game, aldosterone.
Okay.
It's crucial for keeping that blood pressure in check.
All right, aldosterone. Tell me more. How is it produced?
Okay, so aldosterone synthesis starts off similar to cortisol,
Uh-huh.
but then it takes a unique turn. The final steps are all handled by a single enzyme called CYP11B2, also known as aldosterone synthase.
Okay.
And here's where it gets interesting. Remember CYP17, the fork in the road enzyme?
Yeah.
It's absent in the zone where aldosterone is made.
So it's like aldosterone has its own dedicated production line.
Exactly. And this ensures that its production isn't, influenced by those same factors that control cortisol.
Interesting.
It's all about maintaining that, that delicate balance.
Right, right.
Instead, aldosterone is mainly regulated by two things. You have angiotensin II, which kicks in when your blood pressure drops. And then potassium levels. It's a very finely tuned feedback system that ensures your body's responding appropriately, you see.
This is fascinating. So we've got cortisol, aldosterone, but I know there are other steroid hormones produced by those adrenal glands.
Right.
What about those androgens we talked about earlier? What's their role?
So yeah, androgens, they're often thought of as male hormones. But both men and women actually produce them.
Oh, yeah.
And the adrenal glands are a key source, especially for women.
Interesting.
The most abundant ones are DHEA and its sulfated form, DHEA sulfate.
But why would women's adrenal glands be, making androgens? Doesn't that seem a bit counterintuitive?
Well, it might seem that way, but it's all part of this intricate dance of hormones in the body,
Right.
So these adrenal androgens, they're actually weaker than testosterone.
Okay.
And they can even be converted into estrogens in the body.
Wow.
So you see, it's not just about producing one type of hormone. It's really about maintaining a very delicate balance between all of them.
It all makes sense now.
And what's even more intriguing is that research suggests that, things like prolactin, which is a hormone involved in milk production, and even our immune cells might have a role in regulating adrenal androgen production.
You're telling me my immune system can influence my hormone production. I mean, how does that even make sense?
Well, it's still being explored, but it really highlights this amazing interconnectedness between all the different systems in our bodies.
Absolutely.
It seems that there's definitely more to adrenal androgen regulation than we initially thought.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
So we've got these adrenal glands cranking out cortisol, aldosterone, and androgens. But who's the boss? Who's telling those glands how much of each hormone to produce?
That's where the pituitary gland comes in. It's like the conductor of an orchestra, It sends out signals to all these different glands throughout the body, including the adrenal glands. And the key messenger for adrenal steroid production is this hormone called ACTH.
So ACTH is like the maestro of the hormone symphony.
Exactly. ACTH controls that production of cortisol and to some extent the androgens as well.
Interesting.
And it works on two levels. There's that rapid response where it quickly boosts cholesterol conversion, you see.
Okay.
And then there's a long-term effect where it stimulates that production of the enzymes needed for steroid synthesis. It's a beautifully orchestrated system.
Wow. But I'm guessing ACTH isn't working solo here. There must be other players involved in this complex dance, right?
Oh, you're absolutely right. ACTH actually interacts with a whole network of proteins and receptors within those adrenal cells. It's this complex dance of molecular signaling, influencing gene expression, modulating enzyme activity. It's like a whole ecosystem happening inside each cell.
Wow, this whole process is incredible. But what happens when this delicate system gets disrupted, like with those congenital adrenal hyperplasia conditions we were talking about?
Right. That's where things can get pretty challenging. CAH can manifest in a variety of ways, you see. It depends on which enzyme is deficient and to what extent.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of situation.
Not at all. For instance, a deficiency in 21-hydroxylase, which is a key enzyme in both cortisol and aldosterone production, that can lead to a condition called salt wasting.
Oh, wow.
The body loses excessive sodium, and that can actually be life-threatening, Yeah. And it can also result in virilization in females because of that overproduction of androgens that we talked about.
Wow. So each type of CAH presents its own unique set of challenges.
Exactly. It really does.
That sounds incredibly serious.
It can be, yeah. And it underscores the importance of early diagnosis and proper management,
Right.
But the complexities of CAH should go far beyond what we can cover here. But hopefully this gives you a glimpse into that profound impact these enzyme deficiencies can have on that very delicate balance of adrenal steroid production.
It certainly does. We've covered a lot of ground from cholesterol to complex enzyme pathways.
Yeah.
And it's clear these hormones are absolutely crucial for our health and well-being. But I'm definitely ready to learn more about CAH.
Of course.
What it means for people who are affected by it.
Absolutely. So in the next part, we'll delve deeper into this fascinating and often challenging world of CAH.
I'm ready when you are.
Welcome back to our deep dive into adrenal steroid biosynthesis.
Last time we explored how these powerful hormones are made.
Right.
And learned that even tiny glitches in the process can have huge consequences.
Exactly. And as promised, we're going to delve deeper into that world of CAH,
Okay.
congenital adrenal hyperplasia.
Okay.
It's a group of genetic disorders that can, really disrupt things.
Okay, so we know it involves enzyme deficiencies.
Mhm.
But what does that, actually mean for someone's body?
Well, remember those assembly lines we talked about?
Mm-hmm.
Where enzymes modify cholesterol to make those different hormones?
Yeah.
Well, in CAH, one or more of those workers is either missing or, not doing its job properly.
So it's like the assembly line gets jammed up.
Precisely. And the effects can vary so widely depending on which enzyme is affected.
Right.
But the common thread is that the adrenal glands, they just can't produce the right amount of certain hormones.
Mm.
And that just throws everything off balance.
And we touched on how CAH can lead to, a shortage of cortisol
Right.
and aldosterone, causing problems like salt wasting and hypertension.
Mm-hmm.
But what about when there's, too much of something? Like the androgens, what happens then?
Well, that's where things can get especially challenging, particularly for females.
Right.
An overproduction of androgens, especially during fetal development,
Uh-huh.
can lead to virilization.
Okay. Which is the development of male characteristics.
So we're talking about things like facial hair, a deeper voice,
Mm-hmm.
or even, changes in genital development.
Exactly. And these changes can be incredibly difficult to deal with,
Right.
both physically and emotionally, especially for young girls.
Of course, yeah.
It really underscores that profound impact hormones have
Yeah.
on our development
Yeah.
and our sense of self.
It's heartbreaking to think about, families going through that.
It is, and it makes early diagnosis and proper management so important.
Mm.
Thankfully, with the right medical care,
Yeah.
many individuals with CAH can live full and healthy lives.
Okay, so let's break down the different types of CAH a bit.
Okay.
We talked about, 21 hydroxylase deficiency earlier.
Right.
What are some of the other common types?
Another common type is 11 beta hydroxylase deficiency.
Yeah.
This one affects the enzyme that plays a role in both cortisol and aldosterone production.
A deficiency can lead to a buildup of certain precursors, which can cause high blood pressure and
Okay.
virilization.
Similar issues to 21 hydroxylase deficiency,
Mm-hmm.
but caused by a different enzyme.
That's right. And then there are, rarer forms of CAH too,
Right.
each with its own set of consequences.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that the severity of CAH can vary so greatly, depending on the specific gene mutation involved.
So it sounds like there's no one-size-fits-all approach to understanding and managing this condition.
Exactly. Some individuals, might have very mild symptoms, while others have, life-threatening conditions.
Wow.
It really highlights that need for personalized medicine.
Okay. So we've talked about, enzyme deficiencies and hormonal imbalances.
Right.
But what about treatment? What does that involve?
Well, the main goal is to replace those missing hormones and suppress the overproduction of others. So, for example, someone with cortisol deficiency would typically receive lifelong glucocorticoid therapy, often with hydrocortisone.
And how do you address aldosterone deficiency?
Well, they might need mineralocorticoid therapy, usually with fludrocortisone, to help maintain that electrolyte balance and blood pressure.
Okay, so that takes care of the deficiencies. But what about that excess androgens? How do you manage that?
Well, it can be a bit more complex. Sometimes higher doses of those glucocorticoids can help.
Okay.
In other cases, medications that block androgen receptors or maybe inhibit their production might be used.
So it's all about finding the right balance for each individual.
Exactly. It requires close monitoring and adjustments over time.
Right.
As the body's needs can change.
It's clear that CAH is such a complex condition.
It is.
That requires a multidisciplinary approach.
Absolutely. Individuals with CAH really benefit from having a whole team of specialists.
Yeah.
Including endocrinologists, geneticists, and psychologists.
Right.
It's a real team effort, to provide the best possible care.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the intricacies of adrenal steroid biosynthesis and the challenges of CAH. It's fascinating, but also kind of daunting to think about all the things that can go wrong.
It is. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
But remember, this is just a glimpse into a vast and ever-evolving field,
Right.
with ongoing research and advances in medicine. We're constantly learning more and improving our ability to diagnose and treat these conditions.
That's reassuring. So we've explored how these hormones are made.
Right.
And what happens when things go awry.
Yeah.
But what happens to these hormones, once they've served their purpose? I mean, they don't just stick around forever, do they?
That's a great question, and it leads us to the often overlooked, equally important aspect of adrenal steroid metabolism. That breakdown and removal of these hormones from your body.
So we're talking about cortisol, aldosterone, and the androgens, right?
Right.
What happens to them?
Well, think of it like a cleanup crew, making sure these hormones don't overstay their welcome and cause any trouble.
Right.
And just like with their production, this process is carefully regulated to ensure these hormones are inactivated, at the right time and in the right places.
So it's not just about getting rid of waste.
Right.
It's about, maintaining balance.
Exactly. And just like with those production pathways that we discussed,
Right.
adrenal steroid metabolism involves a series of steps, each carried out by specific enzymes.
Those enzyme workhorses are back.
They're essential for so many processes.
Yeah.
And in this case, many of these enzymes are found in the liver, which acts as the body's main metabolic processing center.
So the liver's like the body's detox plant.
A perfect analogy. It's equipped with a remarkable array of enzymes that can modify and break down all sorts of substances, including those hormones.
Okay.
Let's take cortisol as an example.
Okay.
Once it's circulated in your bloodstream and, done its job, it heads over to the liver.
And what happens there? Does it get recycled or something?
Not quite. In the liver, cortisol goes through a whole series of changes that make it, less active and more water soluble, easier for the body to get rid of.
Right.
A key enzyme involved is called 11-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase type 2.
Okay.
Or 11-HSD2 for short.
11-HSD2. I'm trying to keep all these enzyme names straight.
I know, there are a lot. But this one is particularly important because it converts cortisol to cortisone, which is a much less active form.
So it's like dimming the lights on cortisol's signal.
Precisely. And this is so crucial, for preventing cortisol from interfering with aldosterone, which we know is vital for regulating that blood pressure.
So there's crosstalk between these hormones.
Right.
And this enzyme helps keep them from stepping on each other's toes.
Exactly. It's a delicate dance.
Wow.
Once cortisol is converted to cortisone, it undergoes further modifications, making it even easier for your kidneys to excrete it in urine.
So it's like tagging it for disposal.
Exactly. And the same principles apply to the metabolism of aldosterone and those adrenal androgens.
Right.
They undergo various transformations in the liver, making them less active and ready for excretion.
This is a pretty efficient system, making sure these hormones are cleared out once they've done their job.
It is, but just like with the production pathways, any disruptions in these metabolic processes can lead to health problems.
What kind of problems are we talking about?
Well, for instance, if that enzyme that converts cortisol to cortisone isn't working properly,
cortisol can build up
Yeah.
and start acting like aldosterone, leading to high blood pressure and fluid retention.
So even though cortisol isn't, normally involved in blood pressure regulation, it can cause problems if it's not, properly metabolized.
Exactly. It highlights how important these metabolic pathways are for maintaining that healthy balance.
Right.
Similarly, issues with androgen metabolism can lead to an excess of these hormones, causing symptoms like unwanted hair growth, acne, or irregular periods.
This really drives home the point that everything's connected: hormone production, metabolism, and our overall health.
It really is, and it emphasizes the need for a holistic approach to healthcare. Considering all aspects of these complex systems.
Wow. This deep dive has taken us on quite a journey. From the, molecular machinery of hormone production to the intricacies of metabolism.
It's been fascinating to explore these pathways and the potential problems that can arise.
It's been a pleasure sharing this journey with you. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to ponder.
Okay, hit me with it.
So considering how intertwined adrenal steroid production and metabolism are
Right.
with various bodily functions,
Yep.
how might variations in these systems contribute to those differences we see between individuals, in their stress responses, their energy levels, or even personality traits?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah,
It makes you appreciate just how much these hormones, influence who we are.
it really does. And it's a reminder that there's always more to discover
Yeah.
about the incredible complexity of the human body.
Well said. This duck dive has been incredibly insightful.
Good.
Thanks for, guiding us through this complex world.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into adrenal steroid biosynthesis.
We've journeyed through the intricate pathways of hormone production, and we explored those challenges of CAH.
Yeah, and now I'm kind of curious what happens to these powerful hormones once they've, done their jobs.
Right.
I mean, they don't just hang around forever, right?
That is a great question. It leads us to this fascinating world of adrenal steroid metabolism, the breakdown and removal of these hormones from your body.
So we're talking about cortisol, aldosterone, and the androgens, right? What happens to them?
Well, you can think of it like a cleanup crew,
Yeah.
making sure these hormones don't overstay their welcome and cause any trouble.
Yeah.
And just like with their production, this process is, carefully regulated to ensure that those hormones are inactivated at the right time and in the right places.
So it's not just about, like getting rid of waste.
Right.
It's really about, maintaining balance.
Exactly. And just like with those production pathways that we discussed earlier,
Right.
adrenal steroid metabolism involves a series of steps, each carried out by very specific enzymes.
Oh, those enzyme workhorses are back.
They're essential, for so many processes. And in this case, a lot of those enzymes are actually found in the liver,
Okay.
which acts as the body's main metabolic processing center.
The liver's like the body's detox plant.
Yeah, a perfect analogy. It equipped with this remarkable array of enzymes that can, modify and break down all sorts of substances, including those hormones.
Okay. So let's take cortisol as an example.
Okay.
Once it's circulated in the bloodstream and done its job, it heads to the liver.
Right.
And what happens there? Does it get, like recycled or something?
Not quite. In the liver, cortisol goes through this whole series of changes that make it less active and more water soluble, easier for the body to get rid of. A key enzyme involved is called 11-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase type 2.
Okay.
Or 11-HSD2 for short.
11-HSD2. I'm trying to keep all these enzyme names straight.
I know there are a lot. But this one is particularly important because it converts cortisol to cortisone,
Okay.
which is a much less active form.
So it's like dimming the lights on cortisol signal.
Exactly. And this is crucial for preventing cortisol from interfering with aldosterone,
Right.
which we know is vital for regulating blood pressure.
So there's like crosstalk between these hormones,
Mhm.
and this enzyme helps keep them from, stepping on each other's toes.
Exactly. It's a very delicate dance.
Wow.
Once that cortisol is converted to cortisone,
Yeah.
it undergoes even more modifications, making it even easier for your kidneys to excrete it in the urine.
So it's like tagging it for disposal.
Exactly. And the same principles apply to the metabolism of aldosterone and those adrenal androgens.
Right. Okay.
They undergo various transformations in the liver,
Okay.
making them less active and ready for excretion.
This is a pretty efficient system.
Yeah.
Making sure these hormones are cleared out once they've done their job.
It is, but just like with those production pathways, any disruptions in these metabolic processes can lead to health problems.
What kind of problems are we talking about?
Well, for instance, if that enzyme that converts cortisol to cortisone isn't working properly,
Okay.
cortisol can build up
Right.
and start acting like aldosterone,
Wow.
leading to high blood pressure and fluid retention.
So even though cortisol isn't normally involved in blood pressure regulation,
Right.
it can cause problems if it's not properly, metabolized.
Exactly. It just it highlights how important those metabolic pathways are for maintaining that healthy balance.
Yep.
Similarly, issues with androgen metabolism
Mhm.
can lead to an excess of those hormones,
Yeah.
causing symptoms like, unwanted hair growth, acne, or irregular periods.
This really drives home the point that, everything is connected.
Hmm.
Hormone production, metabolism,
Right.
and our, overall health.
It really is, and it emphasizes the need for a holistic approach to healthcare.
Yeah.
Considering all aspects of these complex systems.
Wow. This deep dive has taken us on quite a journey
Yeah.
from, the molecular machinery of hormone production
Right.
to the intricacies of metabolism.
Yeah.
It's been fascinating to explore these pathways
Yeah.
and those potential problems that can arise.
It has been an absolute pleasure sharing this journey with you.
Likewise.
And as we wrap up here,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with just a thought-provoking question to ponder.
Okay, hit me with it.
So, considering how intertwined adrenal steroid production and metabolism are with various bodily functions,
Mhm.
how might variations in these systems contribute to the differences we see, between individuals,
Mhm.
in their stress responses, their energy levels, or even personality traits?
That is a really, really interesting question. It makes you appreciate just how much these hormones uh, influence who we are.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that there's always more to discover about this incredible complexity of the human body.
Well said. This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. Thanks for, guiding us through this complex world.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.